welcome. Thank you so much for attending the session, Stronger Together, Consortium-building for advancing the alternative protein industry. My name is Weston. I'll be serving as your host and moderator for this session. I'm very much looking forward to our discussion, which will come to you in two parts. The first part is going to be a sort of pitch slam for trade associations, and I defy you to find another conference you can go to where you will have that experience. So a very unique GFC special there. We'll have each of our panelists introduce themselves, talk a little bit about the work that they do with their groups, and a lot of them, of course, wear multiple hats. They can tell a little bit about some of the things they do during their day jobs, in addition to all the work that some of them are doing, of course, in trade groups and associations. And then we'll move into a panel discussion. As moderator, I have, along with our panelists, prepared some excellent questions for that discussion. But as we all know, some of the most interesting questions are the questions that moderators like me don't ask. So if you, as an audience, have questions as our panelists are presenting during their introductions or during the guided conversation, please feel free to submit those in the Swap Card app. I believe you can do so on the session itself, and I will be monitoring those questions and interjecting them as appropriate. So if you'd like to watch myself or our panelists squaring, please feel free to submit some very interesting questions. I'm going to pass it off first to Rachel from the Plant-Based Foods Association. Each of our panelists will have 5 minutes to introduce what they're doing, and we'll just go through the list. Thank you all very much. And Rachel, up to you.
Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thank you to the GFI team for having me and for hosting this panel discussion. I'm excited about this. So I'm going to share an overview of the Plant-Based Foods Association. So I am the CEO of the PBFA, as well as the Plant-Based Foods Institute, which is the charity organization, the 501c3 sister organization to the Plant-Based Foods Association. Before I start, there is a prompt to know any kinds of disclosures. So I've just noted my role with the Plant-Based Foods Institute. In addition to PBFA, I'm also on the board of the Plant-Based Foods Institute. And I also am a proud member of the Regenerative Organic Alliance, which operates the Regenerative Organic Certification, and have been on that board for about 6 years now. So starting off with the Plant-Based Foods Association, many may have heard or recently familiar with the organization, but the PBFA is the trade association in the United States that is representing the plant-based food sector and its interests. And the mission is to champion, strengthen, and elevate our members and the industry, the category as a whole. We have a membership of about 350 members. The majority of those members are plant-based food brands who manufacture plant-based food products. And that ranges from plant-based meats through to dairy, eggs, baked goods, snacks, protein powders, frozen meals. We have 15 different categories that we track now. And I mentioned the Plant-Based Foods Institute. The Plant-Based Foods Institute is an organization that is really focused, it's a separate legal entity, that is really focused on leveraging the power of the industry, the power of businesses to be able to drive broader food systems transformation. It is our view between PBFA and PBFI that it not only matters what we produce, but it also matters how we produce it. We have an opportunity in front of us to be able to maximize the benefit of food systems change for all stakeholders and for the planet. So through the combined work of the PBFA and the PBFI, we really think, how do we optimize the benefit to not only animals, but to people, environments, ecosystems as well? I will also mention that I mentioned the PBFA is a U.S.-based trade organization. When I joined the PBFA 2.5 years ago, I often got the question, is PBFA going to expand globally? We have needs outside of the U.S. to represent and champion the interests of the plant-based foods industry. outside of the U.S. borders. And instead of expanding PBFA internationally, we have instead formed a working group called the International Plant-Based Foods Working Group that convenes 9 different trade associations representing plant-based foods all across the globe, including Europe and India, China, Mexico, and other geographies as well. And we work with these other trade associations to align around our global priorities to advance the plant-based foods industry, and also focus on how do we increase the resourcing that is needed in order to do this work globally. And in terms of our focus areas, both for the U.S. and for the work that we're doing in partnership with other organizations across the globe, we have 3 pillars of work. And the first one, which I'll mention, is community. That is our membership. We are a membership organization. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about governments later, so I will save that for now. But we leverage the power and the input and the experience of our 300 plus members and use that to develop our programs. We also reciprocate by being able to engage and push forward initiatives that any one company would not be able to do, or wouldn't be wise for any one company to do on their own. So we are constantly working on creating resources and data that are beneficial to our members. One of the packages of data that we put out is in partnership with our friends here at GFI around our retail sales data, which captures the size and various insights into the U.S. plant-based foods industry. But we have a host of other resources that we put out as well. We also run the Certified Plant-Based Seal and provide a lot of events and opportunities for our members to connect with one another. The other 2 main pillars of our program include policy and marketplace. Policy includes our work on government relations, advocacy, regulations, and legislation. I only have a couple of minutes right now to be able to give an overview, so there's very little that I can get into on the details of this moment, but this includes things like working to reduce the restrictions to plant-based food companies when it comes to how they label their products, and being able to use commonly used terminology like meat, milk, burger, cheese, etc. We also do a lot of engagement at the federal level as well with the U.S. government. And we have a fairly robust marketplace program as well that focuses on building partnerships with retailers, e-commerce companies, food service companies, to be able to partner with them to look at what their merchandising strategies are and how they are presenting and making plant-based foods accessible. How much shelf space? Where in the store are they placing plant-based foods? What is the marketing and promotion that can be done at that point of sale that will ultimately lead to higher sales for plant-based foods? And there is also a whole host of research that sits behind this as well. One of the exciting areas of research that I will touch on quickly is our migration research, which we do in partnership with Kroger. We are able to access Kroger shopper data and are monitoring 8 million Kroger households to assess whether they are buying plant-based foods in addition to the animal-based foods that are in their carts, or whether they are starting to replace animal-based foods with plant-based foods. So it's very unique being able to get that access to actual shopper data, and that is through our partnership with retail players. So I'll leave it at that for now, but essentially through the work of the PBFA and the sister organization, the PBFI, our vision is a world where values and business interests harmonize to create a plant-based food system that respects the dignity and health of all living beings and the planet. And thank you. I look forward to hearing from the other panelists and to the discussion.
Welcome, Jim, next from the Protein Association. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good morning, all. Fungi are exciting in so many ways, and they're truly varied in their application. Now, with only 5 minutes to enthuse you about fungi, and doing so with a Scottish accent, I really do hope you will all keep up. The Fungi Protein Association, just like the kingdom of fungi, is is very varied in terms of its range and types of organizations. They're all very individual in their own way, and collectively they're certainly much greater than the sum of their own parts. My name is Jim Laird. I'm the CEO of Enough. We are one of the founding members of the Fungi Protein Association. And today I would like to just give you a taste of the history of the FPA, which today spans 4 continents, about 40 members, and is growing in size. We're a membership organisation which is about 40 members, but we are free to join, we are free to leave, and the entry criteria is just to share a passion in fungi. And we are truly agnostic about strain or about process. But what does unite us is the world of fungi and a fascination of their ability to make great tasting food, to make delicious or various colours, and as some would describe it, to be the workhorse of nature. I had planned to show you a minute or two of the fantastic fungi film, but in order to give due time to my colleagues, I had to condense that down. But I'm going to call out a couple of things in there, and maybe just play you a couple of videos just to capture the essence of fungi. I hope this plays. No, it doesn't. Let's try it one more time. Huh? Okay, I think we checked it earlier. Anyway, so I was going to capture the video. The first video captured from that, and I would encourage you to go and see fantastic fungi. That fungi are described as it's not like a vegetable and it's not like an animal. It's somewhere in between. And that's really what captures and makes it special. Within some of the examples of what you see from fungi there, we've got rice jerky, which tastes delicious. We've got corn, who are the OG of the alternative protein industry and make delicious food. We've got Nature's Find, who are doing alt dairy and alt protein. We've got a bunda from Enough, and if you haven't tried it, I think it is the most genuine alternative chicken fillet out there. There's many of these things are on the recipes on the menus here, and I applaud and thank GFI for facilitating this event. The second thing that message from that video is it's amazing what we don't know about fungi or about mushrooms. They really are a frontier, and I think for me that captures one of the many reasons why collaboration in this sector is super important. All these things we don't know, we need to come together to share the pre-competitive insights and knowledge that make more delicious food. And consortium building is essential to advance our industry, and why we're super excited about the impact of and opportunity of organisations such as on stage today. In terms of the genesis of the FPA, it really comes from a convergence of enthusiasm. In the spring of last year, Tim Finnegan, who was a long-standing head of R&D of Quorn, was convening a mycoprotein summit. And then in parallel, I heralded Audrey and Lane, who convened our Fermentation Founders Roundtable. The convergence of those two things created essentially what became the FPA. And it's about a year ago. I think some of us in the room thought maybe 5 to 10 members would be a good idea. Get it started small, started early, develop some momentum. Instead of that, we quickly mushroomed, and I will credit any puns and jokes in this room to Paul Shapiro, who's at the back of the room, and mushroomed and became 40 members very, very quickly. In terms of the scope and the activities of the FPA, we are pre-competitive. I think there's very many similarities to what Rachel described. Our scope covers policy, regulatory, and communication. There's many examples of why some of that great communication. And my personal favourite from it is, and again, the puns out there, we created the Champignons League. And we're on this stage together, held in very similar traits, and one of those is collaboration. And I think that mycoprotein summit that Quorn did start happened last year, and there's a real transition and change of behaviours. Quorn, who for a long time had been living in splendid isolation, changed that. And some of the examples there, Marco Brittaka said, we need brave collaborations across the industry. We need to see a multi-sectorial collaboration. And that's the thing which comes from our societies, our associations. And it isn't just fungi versus plant versus soya. I think we come together, and we come together under GFI, under ProVeg, under Alt Protein Association. In the 12 seconds I've got left, I'm going to indulge myself by just telling you about my company enough. We are a biomass fermentation company who've just built our first facility. We are doubling it in scale. We are trying to address a market which BCJ says vast. And the simple reality is, individually, we will not address this market. Individually, we will not reach a scale. And it's only by the collaboration across the sector, by that multi-sectorial collaboration, that we do start to see it and we can start to really address the scale of our industry. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Next, we'll hear from Nicki Briggs from Precision Fermentation Alliance.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. I have the very enviable position of speaking after Jim and his magnificent accent. But I just need my slides on the screen and then we'll jump in. But I'm Nicki Briggs. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Communications at Perfect Day, and I also serve as the chair of the newly formed Precision Fermentation Alliance. Perfect. And so I think what's interesting about this session today is one, I mean, this is really inside baseball stuff, forming alliances. So it's so neat to see this room be so packed, but also behind me is really, quite a range of different associations at different tenures. And PFA is really the new kid on the block. So I'm going to give you some insights into what it's like to actually form one of these groups, because we're really doing it in real time as we're talking. So our mission as an association is to champion precision fermentation and to really have it be a trusted solution for a more resilient and sustainable food system. And in building this, it wasn't something that happened overnight. I think for us, it has been a journey that has really been deeply steeped in alliance. Everything about what we're doing is purposeful and has been discussed and discussed and discussed amidst our members. We actually started this journey in 2020 by just bringing together the companies in this newly formed space. And there were far fewer even just 3 years ago to talk about needs, challenges in an industry. And one of the places that we really rallied around was, what the heck do we call this? How do we drive consistency in messaging and nomenclature? If we're confused, how do we just help decrease confusion externally? And so this became more of an informal initiative of just sharing thoughts, learnings, research. And quickly, over the next 12 months and 18 months, we realized there was a real opportunity to formalize our efforts and think even beyond what do you call this into other advocacy and education efforts. And so last year in June, we all came together at a conference in New York and really used an in-person opportunity to say we're ready to formalize an official trade association. Since then, we launched in February 2023. And as we came together, everything has been steeped in deep collaboration as an industry. We've spearheaded several strategic workshop sessions to make sure that the point of view and the goals for our industry weren't led by one company or one external executive director. And through this, we've come up with 5 imperatives. I'll say that really our focus right now is near term. We're thinking about solidifying this industry and driving as much momentum as possible by focusing on, sort of the adopters, the early adopters on that curve. So the stakeholders that are going to allow us to be successful. And so really it's about defining what is this industry. It's stewarding this industry and allowing us to be as successful as possible with the gold standard best practices, thinking about engaging the right stakeholders along the way, regulatory and policy, making sure that we are working with the right regulators to be able to be a sustainable industry, and then driving funding both at the state and federal level. And also so much of our work has just been about in-industry coordination, right? Making sure that we are sharing learnings, that we're on the same page, but also really taking our alliance and using it to create inroads with other industries. So that's both in the plant-based sector, it's in commodity animal industries as well, where we are looking to share learnings. We're new, right? We don't know everything. And we really want to minimize opposition and think about reducing risk for this industry so that we can be viable as we think about large global partnerships. We were founded with 9 member companies. In February, we since have grown to a 16 company organization in less than 7 months. And I think what's neat about all of our members is that we represent different categories across milk, eggs, breast milk, technical services, consumer products. And really, as we thought about creating this trade association, we really wanted it to be diverse. I'm not at all going to try and read all that language, but this is just showing how we've diversified our membership tiers. There's 4 ways that you can participate in our association. And it is about really casting a wide net across the value chain. So whether you are a precision fermentation technology company, whether you're a large industrial fermentation manufacturer who wants to be involved, you're providing services, whether it's strain engineering, screening, or you're a really important nonprofit like GFI, or you're using ingredients in consumer packaged goods and market. all of these points of view are what makes our organization tick. We have 4 committees that are really the driving workforce of everything that we're doing across comms and marketing, advocacy, engagement, regulatory and policy, and then membership. And I think the key to our success has been deep collaboration between these committees, sharing learning, sharing work streams, and making sure that everything we're doing is deeply connected. We're a US-based organization, just given the regulatory landscape of our industry, it makes the most sense. But we are setting ourselves up to be the premier association globally for precision fermentation and working very closely with global organizations like Food Fermentation Europe. And we also have a global member base as well, even though we're focused on the US. And this is our governing structure. We are member-led, member-operated. We have representation across each of our members in our committees. And I think I'm out of time, so I look forward to the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicki. Next up, we'll have Ziliang from the Asia Pacific Society for Cellular Agriculture. Ziliang, take it away.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. My name is Ziliang Yan. I am the secretary for APAC SCA, short for Cellular Agriculture Society for APAC. In my spare time or my daytime, also the founder and CEO of Cellex, a cultivated meat company with operations in both Singapore and also in China. So for APAC SCA, for APAC SCA, we were formed in 2022 with 11 founding members. We are headquartered in Singapore, and the mandate for us is really cultivated meat in the APAC region. And the focus is really working with institutions, industry partners, associations, regulatory bodies, experts, and also scientists, universities to promote our industry in the APAC region, including shaping the consumer perception, build ecosystem, and also engage with regulators to promote regulatory approval process in the APAC region. And these are the 11 members within the society, covering from Singapore, China, South Korea, Japan to Israel. And our organization is also a member-led organization. We have 5 committee members, all from the members, and also we have 2 full-time members on the society as well. And both of them are based out of Singapore. And unfortunately, they're at a conference that we're organizing in Singapore, and that's why they're not able to be here today. And there are 3 main things our society does. The first is really on regulatory, approval process. Our goal is to coordinate regulations in the APAC region. There are 2 initiatives that we're currently undertaking. The first one is, together with GFI APAC, we have formed a regulatory coordination forum where we're working with 10 plus trade associations in specific countries, plus companies, to use that as a platform to encourage cross-border collaboration and conversation with regulatory bodies. For example, in China so far, we're working with the we're working with Cellular Agriculture China and also CFSA, which is a regulatory body in China, to foster communication between CFSA and also SFA in Singapore, to help push forward the regulatory process there. And the goal with this forum is really to establish a formal mechanism for conversation between different countries, with the long-term vision to even have mutual recognition of alignment of regulatory framework between different countries. So that's the first initiative. Second initiative is we're also co-chairing the Singapore Novel Foods committee, and we're currently working on a standard, the first standard for the industry in terms of the food safety, manufacturing, as well as labeling and also terminology for Singapore as well. So that's the first part, to coordinate APAC regulations. The second part is around shaping perception. So far, we have commissioned a couple of studies, consumer studies, mostly in Japan and also South Korea, and happy to share those, with the rest of the, with the audience here today. If you're interested, happy to talk, after the presentation. And lastly is around ecosystem building, and here is mostly organizing events for the industry. So far we have organized the first the first food tech event called Alternative Protein and also Food Show in Singapore, with more than 200 participants in May this year. And also, we're also organizing a cultivated food pavilion during the SIAW in Singapore this year. And if there are companies who are hoping to join the pavilion, please let me know. We're very open to have more members join that event as well. So just to summarize, APAC Society mostly focus on cultivated meat. So far, we have 11 members and continue to grow. The three pillars are the perception shaping, the consortium-building, as well as regulatory framework building as well. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Zayon. Next, we have Julie Owen from the Soy Nutrition Institute.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm the CEO for Soy Nutrition Institute. And I get the advantage of going later, and I'm going to leverage a few things and just skip through so we go a little bit faster. Soy Nutrition Institute Global is a trade association. It's membership based, and it was founded in 2021. It's kind of misleading, though, because we really have 20 years worth of soy research that we're building on a history of Dr. Mark Messina's work as Soy Nutrition Institute that was founded in 2004. And many of you know his name. He's a leader in the industry for research and nutrition. So we're very blessed to have a lot of body of work that we've brought into this organization. Additionally, there was a policy and advocacy group called SAMA, Soy Foods of North America, that was also in existence that we have pulled in some of those membership activities. So we are comprised and receive our funding from the various members mentioned here. As you can see, we really span deeply into this up and down the value chain, ranging from consumer packaged good companies to trade associations to various organizations in the soy space. And we also have a unique structure where we have a strong independent scientific advisory board, because we really focus on the emerging aspects of the emerging issues that are facing nutrition, and we focus from a scientific perspective and lens. So our vision really is to be that global scientific voice of soy for human health and nutrition. How we plan to do that is to discover, illuminate, and advocate to advance soy's role in human health and nutrition. How we do that is very similar to some of the other organizations. We really structure our pillars based upon scientific research. We have a strong body of evidence that we try to promote through the communications and outreach efforts. We really stay within the space of educating health professionals, nutritionists, and influencers in that area. We really don't step into the role of consumer advocacy, just and education. It gets to be like trying to boil the ocean. And then we really have engaged in policy, and we have a partnership and engagement pillar. Our guiding principle really is how to demonstrate soy contributing to healthy growth, healthy living, and healthy aging. Just as an example, I'm not going to go through this, but I think what makes us unique is that we really have a strong portfolio of ongoing clinical trials. One study that's very near and dear to this area was conducted with Dr. Sibamonti, and it's just recently finishing at UC Davis. And in this study, we're looking at clinical effects of soy and skin health. And as a middle-aged woman, I'm deeply interested in preventing wrinkles and how that might work by my diet versus just topically. We've tallied over 750 presentations in 55 countries and published more than 100 scientific articles, of which 20 have been peer-reviewed and are in journals. How do we do this? We focus really on being that credible, transparent scientific voice for scientific information, in ensuring our communications are grounded in the latest research. Worldwide, that's afforded us 70 million media impressions of our research just since 2021. We think this is an impressive reach, and we'd love to take credit for it. But as I said, we really work collaboratively, and I believe that this is a great example of how we build partnership around common goal and get that messaging out. We are also directly engaged in the food policy landscape. Most of our work in this area does focus domestically in the U.S. We work predominantly with the FDA and the USDA, and then we work through collaborations in regards to congressional activities.
So in conclusion, sustainably producing sufficient food, especially protein for a global population, as we heard, I believe he used the number 10 billion by 2050, represents a significant challenge for all of us. And to meet this demand, a variety of protein sources are going to be required. Soy is just one of those sources that can be consumed across the lifespan to support health and align with sustainable development goals established by FAO. And by working together, I believe we can grow the alternative protein consumption to help meet the caloric and protein needs of a growing population. So thank you. There's information in your session about how to get some additional information. And with that, I will turn it back over to Zach. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. We have one final presentation. Those meetings going up here, I would just note again that if you'd like to submit questions, please go to the session under the schedule or agenda. Click on the live discussion. Should be a green button close to the top. There's a questions area where you can submit your questions, which we'll be addressing as a full panel after our final presentation here, which is from McGee with the Japanese Association of Cellular Agriculture.
Where should I?
Green, yeah, green. Oops,
Hi, this is Megumi from JACA. I'm the representative director of the association and have been active for the past three and a half years in this area. And I'm also one of the advisory board for the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, the strategy to promote the biomanufacturing industry in Japan. And JACA is an industrial organization established in the last December and has 57 corporate members and additional academic supporters right now. And you can visit our website to see the full list of our members and use it as a potential maybe partners list in the Japanese market. And we create policy recommendations and industrial guidelines to build a cell ag industry in Japan. And JACA is also the administrator of the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, Food Tech Public-Private Council as administrator for the cell ag working team. In addition, we also communicate with various ministries, such as the ones that oversees health and food, economy, as well as Consumers Affairs Agency, Food Safety Commission, politicians, industry industrial organizations in Japan, and top 4 consumer organizations in Japan. And we have 7 committees, for example, like safety, definition, labeling, consumer communication, nomenclature, food brand protection, and international strategy. And in that addition, committee for the Osaka Expo 2025. And we have 3 full-time or temporary directors, including myself, and with some advisors around the efficiency and the PR, as well as the auditor. Our administrative team will be like 6 to 10 members, depending on the definition. And many admin tasks have been actually outsourced, not for the admin, only for the admin tasks, not for the policy making. And manuals have been created since the founding time for the stable management. And I would like to mention 2 selected goals of JACA. Actually, we have each goal for each committees. It's too many to introduce all of them, so I just selected 2 of them. The first goal is to establish public-private collaboration to build a better consensus on how to understand and secure the safety of cultivated food. And in the cell ag industry in Japan, the industry is waiting for the government to create some kind of regulation, while the regulatory body is waiting for the industry to establish a stable manufacturing process first. And you may have heard of this kind of like chicken and egg problem in different areas. However, the situation becomes even worse in Japan because there are only a small number of companies in Japan, only like 2 or 3 startups in Japan, whose high-level management is devoted to the cell ag industry, making it difficult for the government to prioritize solving this issue and making it technically difficult for the government also to collect safety-related information locally without language barriers. On the other hand, we also understand that the ministry has limited resources, making it difficult for them to collect safety-related information globally, as well as build some consensus among domestic stakeholders about the safety. So what we are trying to build some kind of consensus about it, at least among like JACA members, and while encouraging the government to establish a resource-rich official framework to work on the safety assessment of this kind of food, not only like cell ag, but also the novel food as well. And the second goal is to encourage overseas government to engage with the Japanese government in discussions of the harmonization of rules, such as the definition and safety measures to create smooth environment for the novel food trading. And we also think it's important that each government to encourage each other to manage communication with domestic industry to achieve a global sustainable food supply system. Okay, so that's actually all for the brief presentation of JACA, and I would like to take a moment to conclude this talk by expressing my sincere gratitude for the Good Food Institute for inviting me to this exciting section. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move now into our guided conversation. So I have a few questions that I've prepared, and I will, of course, be interspersing some questions from our audience. And thank you. We will go ahead and start with the questions. This will be open to all of our panelists, whoever wants to jump in on this. Let's talk a little bit about governance. Can we talk a little bit about the pros and cons of various structures, things you considered, things you discarded, lessons learned, advice you'd have for anyone else here in the room? Anyone want to talk about the governance structure and things that you'd recommend or not recommend?
I should change the slide.
I'll go first. So I think we've got fairly different governance structures amongst the panelists, and I think we've got different funding structures, and those two things possibly go hand in hand. I would envy some of the governance or some of the funding of some of the other panels, and maybe envy less some of the governance. So I think it's maybe a natural evolution that to create more impact, you require more governance, more funding. I think the Fungi Protein Association is in the less mature category, and it relies on energy, enthusiasm, members' activities, but that can only take it so far. And I think that as we get to scale, I stand in awe of some of the governance and strategic thinking of some of the other panelists.
Happy to jump in as well. And the Plant-Based Foods Association was formed in 2016, so is 7 years in. So when the PBFA was started, I've joined PBFA 2.5 years ago. It was formed by 5 founding board members, 5 companies, 2 of which are still represented on the board today. We have Tofurky and Upton's Naturals, who continue to serve on the board, and the founding executive director, Michelle Simon. And it was there was a very hands-on approach at that point from the companies, from the industry itself. The board was very, very involved in the early days and the activities of the organization. As the membership grew, and we have a due structure for our membership, the dues range anywhere from $750 a year up to $35,000 a year, which is calculated based on gross sales from plant-based foods in the U.S. But as the membership grew, the team that was working internally within the Plant-Based Foods Association grew, and we have now grown to a team of about 20 across PBFA and PBFI, which is what allows us to do all of that work across policy and marketplace and communications and membership activities, as well as all that broader food systems work. But it's taken us 7 years to really get to this point. And also note that the funding structure, as you mentioned, Jim, part of our revenue comes in from the membership dues, and that is such a critical part. We also have a diversified revenue stream, though, as well. We do receive some revenue in from our certification, the certified plant-based, as well as from events and sponsorships, and we also accept donations from donors as well. So philanthropy has played a very critical role as well in the association being able to scale. So I think that's important to note and important to be very transparent about, that it's important that we are operating on behalf of the industry and are funded in large part by the industry, but also that infusion of philanthropy has been essential to the PBFA being able to remain strong and consistent, especially over the past couple of years, as we all have weathered some turbulence and some uncertainty in the industry. I also will lastly note that you prompted us with challenges or pros and cons. While it's a wonderful thing that the funding has increased and the staff size and our capacity to be able to engage and drive programs forward has certainly increased, one thing that is really important I keep at the top of my mind is making sure that, because for me and everyone else on the PBFA staff, we are not running a plant-based food business. And I remind myself and every day when I start that, and I'm always thinking, how then am I guided and influenced by the members? Because I think it can become very easy to kind of lose that connection between the board, between the membership, as you grow and as you develop your own expertise, separate expertise on staff. So the relationship with the PBFA board, I think we have Lizzie King from Impossible, who I saw came in to the room. She's on the PBFA board. We have Danny O'Malley from Before the Butcher, who is a member and also on our membership committee, but having the board and various committees that input on a regular basis, not only to me, but to the people within the team that lead various programs is so important to make sure that while we're leveraging that internal expertise, that we continue to be guided by the real world challenges that the members are facing as they're operating their businesses.
Anyone else? Governance?
Yeah, I'll talk. Is this on? Yeah. So I think it's interesting because we're probably the most mature organization and I don't mean in intellect, I just meant in age. Just didn't want to get that mixed up. So having been about 20 years, with soy having, had its darling days and it's kind of matured now, it seems like we were facing a problem in about 2018-19, where a lot of companies were trying to rationalize their trade association memberships. So about that time, some industry leaders got together and decided that S&I Global should merge together the governance of both the research side of things, which was a 501c3, and took checkoff funding from the U.S. soy industry. And then it merged together, like I said earlier, the policy side of things, which was SANA, which was a 501c6. So it was a really interesting time where the leaders in the industry did what was best really for membership and to guide the industry forward. So they dissolved those organizations, set up a separate 501c6, so that the organization could be collected together in one organization. And the governance is just, we have to have a firewall between checkoff funding because it can't be used for lobbying activity. It's governed under the USDA. And then the membership funds go toward any sort of advocacy or lobbying. But what's really been a blessing about this all is that what Rachel mentioned was just that the collaboration among the groups, industries who thought they didn't need to hear about policy and advocacy now sit in the room and can hear at least what's going on, so that when they invest in research, that research has an impact in 7 years when it's going to come out of clinical trials, that it can actually then be turned into advocacy work. So having that dialogue right up front so that you get your studies set up correctly, so that you address the major health impacts or environmental sustainability goals that you're trying to accomplish. It's really important, and I think it's valuable.
So I think for APEC SCA is a bit unique in a situation where we're a new association in an industry, and at the same time we're also a cross-border association. So the first question that we had is where should we be based? I think because we want to be a neutral position, so I think that's why we picked Singapore as the neutral common ground for all of the APEC countries in APEC. And second is for governance structure, we have 5 committee members, and we have a policy internally that each members from each country can only represent one seat of the committee members, and that one is also rotating as well. So every single year we rotate between different companies to represent on the board. And I think another thing that we have been we find is super useful is at first it was all companies volunteering to be doing work, and then realize it's not possible. So I think that's why we onboarded a director and also a manager, and now they're able to handle all of the day-to-day operations for us. And from a funding point of view, we have been relying on funding from the companies in the association. But I think things that we've been learning from other associations is that, we probably need to diversify the funding, especially from governments or philanthropy that can help us grow the presence and the influence of the association moving forward.
Maybe as also one of the example, a younger organization's example, we try to keep administrative decision in among the three directors, because sometimes we need a really quick decision making. Like, for example, sometimes we were asked by a politician that, hey, we're gonna hold a study session for the politician in the 2 weeks. So please select some companies to provide presentation there. So in such cases, we need quick decision. But we try to, as a policy-making organization, we try to keep policy recommendation content to be kind of approved by each JACA members. We have two type of a membership. One is full member and another is observer. So full member can be allocated to each committee and deeply dive into the discussion about the policy. If we are to disclose a policy in public, overseas member will also check in order to it's really important that each company making the same message to the government and to the other external industry. So we are making the consensus among the members. We have 57. So I assume that the other large organizations have more kind of suffered over getting a consensus inside the organization. But the consensus is really important when we make a public document.
And maybe I'll just put a bow on this. I really think what we're hearing, and it's true for the PFA as well, is it really will change the life cycle of an organization. So the PFA has driven by a membership structure and governance that is completely member-led, with a neutral third-party executive director over us to ensure equality and fairness in our operating decisions. And I think to Jim's point, this allows us to do a little less, right? Because it is all driven by member energy and time, but we can be so focused on building the core of what we want to achieve. And as we scale, we have visions to be able to hire staff, to be able to diversify our revenue stream through programmatic materials like icons and packaging symbols. But right now we are so focused on building a strong roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years until we get there.
Thank you all. We're going to go to our first audience question. This one's a little bit about the policy space. And again, I will open it up to all of our panelists who'd like to respond. How have your various consortia interacted with policymakers, and how helpful has it been in working together to elevate your issues in the public sector? And I'll maybe broaden out a little bit, policymakers and regulators as well. Anyone care to comment on that?
I will jump in on that. That's an exciting area. So from the policy side, this is a big focus of our work across PBFA and PBFI. It's very important that we start to amass more political support of plant-based foods, and very importantly, the transition to a plant-based food system, which means looking at engaging with everyone who is part of that value chain. So our engagement on this starts with seed producers and farmers. So we are forging partnerships and relationships happen over the past couple of years in working with farmers who are saying, yeah, I'm interested in diversifying my crops. I'm interested in growing oats or lentils or whatever it may be. And we are then marrying them up with companies that are part of the association who are looking to procure those ingredients. And a lot of companies rely on international supply chains, which we will never fully move away from because of some ingredients only grow in certain parts of the globe. But we've also seen that companies, due to the past year of all these supply network challenges and disruptions and inflation, that companies are looking to build in more resiliency to their business and tighten up those supply networks where possible. So we've had a huge amount of interest from the membership of PBFA and saying, okay, I'm interested in more domestic and resilient supply. So we're connecting those farmers in with the brands. And then you're going to say, okay, this is a question about policy. So I will get to that, because then we are leveraging that interest from farmers and from rural communities to then go to the policymakers and say, hey, your constituents are interested in this industry. They're interested in diversifying away from animal agriculture or growing monoculture corn and soy that are used for animal feed, and instead growing crops that are used for direct human consumption through the plant-based foods industry. And this I see as a really, really important program for us to demonstrate what the benefit is to rural farmers, communities, and their livelihoods, so that we are able to get that support. And then from there, when we're meeting with policymakers, they're saying, okay, how do we do this? Because you were saying, if the U.S. government does not step up and support this kind of production here in the U.S. is not going to be number one anymore when it comes to plant-based foods. We're making that message really loud and clear. The government needs to incentivize plant-based food production. They need to identify where the roadblocks are. We've identified processing of the raw ingredients going into the plant-based food supply as a bottleneck. So we're saying, okay, U.S. government, you need to step in and provide the same incentives that you're providing to the meat industry. That should also go to the plant-based foods industry. Otherwise, the U.S. farmers and rural communities are going to miss out.
As Japan's example, since Prime Minister Kishida is prioritized the topic of economic security, and we rely 75% of feed from imported feed. So we try to keep the message to be related to the the national security when we talk with the government, and try not to just push forward the industry, but we're trying to convince them that, hey, it's really important for the security. And in terms of the strategy per ministry, for example, to motivate METI, we at first, actually, the JACA used to be a voluntary study group back in 2019, and as the first establishment member, we included one politician who is pretty interested in this area as a food security perspective. And he actually in this year, February, Prime Minister Kishida mentioned in the cabinet discussion that the cultivated food is important for the food security. And in that session, the person who motivated him to talk about it was the same politician that was in the founding member. So in such way, we encourage the Ministry of especially Economy about to promote this biotechnology-based manufacturing industry. They allocated 2.3 billion USD for not only for cell-based food, but also like precision fermentation and other like food and manufacturing area. And as for the Ministry of Agriculture, it's really, we try to keep away from the direct communication with the agricultural section, because instead we try to get some understanding from the ministry at the first point, because the ministry can be the point of contact with the agriculture section, and ministry can support us when communicating with them. But in order to get their support, we not only trying to push forward the scientific information, but also mentioned about, for example, like protecting the branded food sale, like a Wagyu, because we have a lot of food branded sale in Japan, and we convinced that hey, it's really important to. It's not only about like supporting emerging industry, but also like if you would like to be one of the stakeholder in this area, you also you so that you can also be the leader in the brand protection area.
And as a newer group that's very much focused on education and advocacy, it would be impossible to represent member interests without a focus on policy and regulatory as well. And I think so much of our work right now is being highly prioritized in terms of the issues we actually speak on, which is very much around funding and infrastructure building, and making sure that as we're using our voice, it's in the right places so that people are actually listening. I'd say the other part of our focus is just making sure that governmental agencies know who we are, right? So going to them as an introduction, no ask, sharing resources, but really making sure that it's a two-way communication and we are understanding the questions they have, that we have those answers front and center, and just honing in our approach and messaging as we continue to grow and evolve. So a lot of listening and learning.
I also want to speak a little bit about the regulatory side. So as a company, SRX, when we talk to the regulators, we get two questions. Number one is, what are the other countries doing? I want to know. The regulators will ask, okay, what is the US, what is Singapore doing? I want to know. Second question is, they don't want to talk to a company. They want to talk to a association that represents a whole list of companies that can give them more holistic picture of the bioprocess of the systems. And that's what at APEC SCA, what the APEC regulation coordination forum is designed to do, is we are hoping to use this as a platform to give regulatory space to talk to each other, to understand what is the current best practice across different countries, and also be able to understand from an industry point of view, what is the holistic bioprocess like versus just one individual company. So I think that's what we have been having some success in having that platform to talk with regulators across different countries.
I just wanted to give a few specific examples. The FDA has been very active this year. Of course, there's the definition of healthy. Front of pack labeling is of concern, and we need to be active in that area. Obviously, the definition, the NOVA classification of ultra processed foods could have major impact on the food industry, especially this type of food. So we actively engage with the FDA by publicly making comments. We were able to participate in the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee this last Tuesday or Wednesday, I apologize, to actually give a testimony and try to keep avenues open that are available for the things that are guided by the dietary guidelines. Also the school meal programs, WIC, within the USDA are very important. And of course, the Farm Bill, which has implications for all of our industries. I think all of those we're trying to keep a pretty tight pulse on and actively participate.
I think I echo a lot of what's been said. I give two examples. One is, I think if we hadn't had the role of GFI today, then we've had Ash and this morning, who we're getting representation with politicians to understand what that we're on the map. I think one great example in terms of policy for fungi stand up, or mushrooms stand up because they're high in fiber, they don't fall over in the wind. But the fiber in fungi was going to be non-recognized as nutritionally beneficial, and exactly that sort of thing about nutritional guidelines is having a voice to amplify the intellect and the knowledge of our members to a much bigger audience is where the association has impact.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how your membership mix is going to look over the next couple of years. When we think about next 2 years, we'll say, who are the new types of members that you are hoping to engage, want to engage? New categories of members could just be new members who come from existing categories. And what do you wish they knew? I suspect some of them are potentially in this audience. So is there anything that's difficult to explain, or just things that you going into those conversations you wish companies knew about the value, or other considerations about becoming a member?
For example, Jakarta, we have 17% of is a startup which directly develops cultivated food. And others is Japan-based corporates, including like food and industrial equipment, chemical packaging, etc. And right now, I'm more interested in actually, like we don't have any presence of like international corporate which have a Japan branch. It's also really important when we talk about like the national food security point of view, and also we need some engagement from like food safety assessment knowledge, because right now in Japan, because there are only like few companies which are directly engaged to the development. It's really actually the technology people, like R&D people, and there are like R&D people and food safety assessment people, but there are so few people who understand both of them, and we need to accumulate knowledge internally about both of the knowledge to understand the safety of novel food. But however, in JACA members, many of them are from the R&D section, and not many of them understand about the food safety assessment. So in that perspective, we need some kind of knowledge from different area.
And the bulk of PFA members to date are precision fermentation technology companies like Perfect Day and others that are actually owning the technology and producing novel proteins or carbohydrates. And I think as you start to see the industry continue to proliferate over the next 2 to 3 years, the diversity of membership will only increase across that value chain, right? I'm excited to see more consumer packaged good members using precision fermentation ingredients. We're already starting to hear from multinational food companies that want to join and want to learn, and also just technology service providers. There's a robust industry of these companies that are providing different services and have such an important point of view. And the thing I would tell to all of them is that really the goal of this and the benefit is it's more long-term, right? We are not a marketing agency. We have benefits collectively, but so much is standing up an industry, protecting the industry, and really enhancing all of our abilities to operate collectively. And I really think the more that you put in as a member, the more you get out, especially in an earlier stage governance structure.
Yeah. So for us, so far, the criteria is you have to be a cultivated meat technology company based in the APAC region. And that's why we only have 11 members so far. So I think that's, and also the reason why we were so strict with the criteria for the first 2 years is because, we're relatively new. We want to get ourselves established before we go out the world and make a bigger impact. I think as we come to the third year, we are hoping to open it up for 2 different types of partners. The first is we're also potentially thinking about opening up to international cultivated meat technology companies who have an interest entered the APAC region, who are hoping to do more education work and also regulatory work with us in the APAC region. And that's number one. Number 2 is we're also opening up to industry partners like our upstream suppliers, like bioreactor or media companies, or our downstream partners like food companies or supply chain companies to be part of the association as well. So I think our focus will continue to be cultivated meat in APAC. We're hoping to see more companies joining our group, and we're potentially opening up for these two future groups in the future.
In terms of expansion and diversification of our membership, I'm really excited over the coming years to continue to comprehensively represent everything that is going on within the sector. Plant-based foods, of course, plant-based meats is still such a critical part of the plant-based foods industry, but plant-based foods has become so much more diversified from there as well. I think I mentioned earlier when I gave my presentation, we are tracking sales across 15 different categories of plant-based foods now, and that really is representative of what consumers are looking for from this industry. Yes, They're interested in a plant-based burger that they can have, but they're also interested in breakfast options and snacking and protein powders used for shakes and really everything in between. And ranging from the foods that are a one-to-one replacement for an animal-based product. There also are consumers, and even the same consumer that at certain eating occasions are looking for more of a whole foods plant-based product as well. So I'm excited to be able to continue to bring in companies to our membership that comprehensively represent the diversity and also therefore the evolving consumer demand and interest in this category. And then in terms of stakeholder engagement, also want to note too that it's so important for us to engage with partners that extend even beyond our membership as well. So there are folks in this room that are really interested in contributing to the strength and the resilience of this space in other ways beyond operating a plant-based food brand. I also welcome you to get in touch because through the Plant-Based Foods Association and the Institute, we have various different communities and groups where you can really look at how do we partner strategically with those across the entire value chain to push this work forward in the most strategic and expeditious way possible. And Zach, you had asked a question about what are some of the most difficult things to explain to members or prospective members specifically. I'll note that it's always a careful balancing act between delivering short-term ROI for our members, for our partners, balanced with long-term strategic considerations around how do we position the industry moving forward. So as an example, a lot of brands will come into the membership and are looking for immediate support, which we endeavor to provide. That immediate support may look like, how do we get our products in front of more potential buyers? How do we work on our pitch and our positioning within the marketplace? How do we understand if we're actually ready to talk? Are we food service ready? Some of those really immediate considerations that they are facing in order to be able to put one step in front of the other to continue with their businesses. And then also it's important for us to be addressing that, but then also looking at what is that long-term pathway forward, and how is PBFA and PBFI focused on that ultimate vision of our food system and working to help create that path. And that can involve a lot of the policy work, which many of us have already spoken about, and a various other program areas. So it's really the balance of those two that can be tricky, but also really exciting to discuss with our members, because I also find that most of our members and folks that are involved in this space are in this, yes, for the business and the business opportunity, but are also very mission and values driven. So once we can also have the conversation where we can illustrate this is PBFA is not just good for your business today, that's what we hope, but also this is a vehicle that you can get on that can help you be even more effective through the collaborative and the collective of association of really charting that path forward towards food systems change.
Right. We're going to do a quick lightning round. I just want a number from you. A range is fine. It's GFC 2025. How much bigger on a percentage basis will you be? In other words, how many new members are you going to add over the next 2 years? So percentage growth, ranges are fine. We'll just go down the line looking for a number. We'll come back to you. Yeah. Julie.
Okay, can I be naughty here and say, I'll give you your answer, but right. Where I really see the impact is not in the growth of membership per se, but the growth of evidence and scientific evidence that we can get in front of people. So in 2030, we'll have finished 7 more clinical trials. And while it may be soy, it really does advance the entire industry because a lot of the evidence is translatable. So to me, that's the bigger number I want to focus on, which right. I think goes to Rachel's comment, which is right on target, which is the value of a trade association is being that vision that can make a change 10 years from now, that any individual one company or one association can't do on their own. It's cost prohibitive, maybe resource prohibitive. So that would be my dream for 2030.
All right. Right. Percentage. That's okay. Hey, questioning the premise. It's good. Push back. Remember, how many percentage growth new members in 2 years?
I mean, we've grown 100% in 7 months, right? So I think the growth for the PFA is limitless, right? Especially as we start to see mainstream adoption, which we will. You're going to start to see companies in more spaces and more places in every corner of the grocery store and all food service establishments. So I just don't think we can put a number on it.
All right.
I'm also going to push back because when I started at PBFA, I set these number goals. We need to get to X number of companies. And honestly, over the past 12 months, our membership number went up quite sizably, and then it stayed kind of stagnant the past 12 months. But now the thing that I'm more, and that's because there's a lot of challenges felt by many within the industry. Also a lot of resilience that has been demonstrated. But now what I'm thinking about more is making sure that we are representing the bulk of the industry. So versus the number of companies, it's do we have, out of all of the products and the entire plant-based foods industry, are we representing the majority of the brands and the products out there? Because if we are not, then we are not going to be as well positioned to be able to do our job effectively. So that's the way that I've started to think about it.
Yeah, I also don't have a clear number, but the more membership we have, like the more thing we can do. That's the only thing I can say. But right now, we are focused on trying to like make a market for the cell ag industry and by 2025-ish, because we have a nationally funded expo called Osaka Expo. And the government is really kind of motivated to show a new technology in this session. So that's one milestone for us. And another is we assume that maybe by 2013, we will some of the cultivated food can be sold in the retails. So in that stage, we need more focus on the consumer communication. So having with that in mind, we especially need to do maybe like 3 things by 13. First one is to, of course, try to create regulatory pathways for cultivated food selling, and also the trading in terms of the like HS code and definition, international definition, etc. And the second one is put cultivated food promotion in the official official strategy, like national strategy for the security. For example, to motivate the government to allocate more funding for like novel food safety assessment, and also for consumer communication. And the last one is creating international framework to protect the brand that sells like Wagyu. It's not just like blocking out all the business opportunity, but try to like keep the like intellectual property which can be allocated to partly allocated to farmers, but also trying to make farmers feel more safe. But on the other hand, creating a new environment for the international companies to get access to the like branded food sales, so that the Japanese economy can also leverage our existing food branded industry. That's it.
Yeah, Zach, I think I'm going to say it's a great question, but I think the number doesn't mean it. I think the number that's important is we represent the 1 or 2% of non-animal protein. And so I guess the question that gets exciting is the BCG chart that I showed earlier, which shows 15% of protein from non-animal sources by 2030, and there's a range between 5 and 50. I think that's the number that's exciting, and it's that one which by 2030, if we don't see that number moving, then we are wholly ineffective.
I have a number for you, Zach. It's 60, but it's not the number that we're looking for. It's actually so if you look at the global population, APAC region accounts for 60% of the global population. And so it's a huge market. At the same time, there are also more than 60 countries in the APAC region, which means it's a very fragmented market. Each different country has its own culture, cuisine, language, all of that. I think what success look like to me, or as a society, is really if we can use this as a platform to facilitate more market entries from companies within APAC regions to different markets, or companies outside of APAC region to come into these markets. I think that would be success for the association.
Great. It's been a very thoughtful meeting of you all. I really appreciate those answers. We only have a couple minutes left, so I do want to make this one quick, and I will broaden. I know some of you have already covered some of this. I do want to broaden the time horizon a little bit, and any initiatives, any things you think that we'll be talking about at Good Food Conference 2030 in the long term, anything that you think is going to be happening in your side of the space, happening with your alliance that you haven't already covered, that we'll be discussing, is like, this is what really moved the industry forward over the intervening 6-7 years.
I'll go quick. I think for fermentation, for fungi, is about fermentation infrastructure capacity. One of the questions from the audience was, will we have shared infrastructure? I think it will come. I think one of our current restrictions is capacity and scale.
I have been a big one, which we haven't touched on today yet, and as heard Megumi mention it, but consumers. We have not talked about consumer perception of plant-based foods or any of our industries, really. And that is going to be something that over the coming years is a big focus for PBFA, PBFI, and I think is going to be a big topic of conversation at a 2030 GFC. I announced a week and a half ago that PBFA, because I shared our key pillars of work that we're focused on policy, marketplace, and community. We are expanding now, and we are going to launch a marketing initiative on behalf of the plant-based foods industry that is speaking directly to consumers. And we are undergoing some consumer segmentation research with our wonderful partners at GFI to understand better the plant-based foods consumer. Where is the lowest hanging fruit? Who is the group of flexitarians that are most curious about plant-based foods but haven't fully engaged with the category? And then also, what is the messaging that resonates with those consumers? From there, we are going to be launching a comprehensive marketing initiative. We are beginning to fundraise for this initiative through various different channels. But I see this as the next big phase of PBFA and importantly of the industry, because we cannot and we are past the point of saying if we get the right products in front of consumers at the right price, that is going to be game over. We know that food choices are deeply emotional for people. They are connected to tradition and culture. And we need to also, in addition to addressing all of those different areas, we need to also recognize that we need to be tuned into consumer behavior and how we prompt consumer behavior change. So that's a big area for us, for the plant-based foods industry, and I think will be a topic at the next GFC.
I couldn't agree more with both of those. I think infrastructure capacity, consumer perception. My answer is going to be a little Groundhog Day because it's what we're talking about right now, but I actually think a lot of what we'll be talking about is collaboration. Right? As we continue to increase capacity to actually get consumers to really believe in this technology and want to purchase it, I think we're going to start to see the silos between our industries really collapse a little bit more as we work with other commodity industries, other food manufacturers, and sell them our ingredients, our products to help further green supply chains.
Maybe add to the consumer communication perspective. Right now, the policy making discussion is only motivated. Only the R&D people is more motivated to engage with the policy making discussion right now. But for example, like 2030, maybe more retailers will be interested in this area. And I think it's really important in terms of like when thinking about the consumer communication and also the food labeling perspective. Right now, we only have like 2 retailers members, but the reason why they're in this space is because they have a corporate venture capital. Still, in order to, right now, like in domestically in Japan, the R&D people is more, really kind of like aggressive in the communication, and they don't have a lot of experience in like how their communication can be seen by the consumers, and that kind of perspective can be mainly delivered by some areas which is more closer to the consumers.
And I might sound like you said it had to be unique, but it just is going to be tangential to my last statement. In 2030 will be the next session of the dietary guidelines. And so it'll be really important for us as an industry in the next 5 years to really get to the scientific evidence as to what is causing the connection between ultra processed foods and obesity, because there's a link that people are trying to make that hasn't really been sussed out yet. And if that is not sussed out and really understood, dietary guidelines could be put into, policies could be established that would hinder the industry. And it would affect pretty well everybody in this room in this type of space. So thank you.
I think my answer will be the role of government, especially in our industry, which is a longer term industry, which with very heavy capex, and also, longer time horizon. Let me just give you 2 examples. One is, if you look at Singapore, why it is the first country to approve cultivated meat is because of the country's, the government's agenda of 30-30, right? If you look at China, for example, if you look at solar panels or EV cars, it's a similar industry. It goes up and down longer term. But now, if you are on the streets of Shanghai, you see a third or a fourth of the cars are EV cars, and 80% of the new sales are EV cars. And that's because the government is really believing in this sustainability path forward, as well as energy, resilience, all of that, which is very similar to food safety and also sustainability for cultivated meat. So I think, for the next 10 years or for next decades, it will be a pretty important role for the government to take over, not take over, but step in and help the industry grow to the next stage.
Those are great answers. We're going to wrap up there. Some of our panelists can stick around if you have questions. If you're interested in joining one or all of these associations as a member, I'm sure they'd love to talk to you about that. They've also provided resources that you can access on the session description. Just scroll down a little bit past the initial description. You'll find some links to various things, including information on becoming a member and the benefits that the various groups provide. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists, and thank you for coming to this session.